All right, so welcome to Discerning Your Doula Path. We each have put in the chat where we're from and where we are on our journey. We're going to have some time for contemplation. So if you have a pen and paper, grab it. If you have thoughts come up, I'm going to pose various questions along the way for you today. I'm not here to dictate any answers. I don't have any hard answers for you, but I've got information and lots of questions to ask to kind of stimulate your thoughts on things. And then, I'm here to kind of discerning. Obviously, the universe is sending me all these people that are, figuring out the path and what am I supposed to do with that next year. So I'm in my sort of, we'll look at this 6-step manifesting protocol that a friend of mine developed. And, I'm definitely in the middle of that too. Okay, some of you already know what an end-of-life doula is, and some of you are maybe very, very new to this. Let me put my thing up. Okay, so now I can read it. So end-of-life doulas are non-medical holistic support that we give to individuals and families during life's final transition. Could be from diagnosis through active dying and beyond. And actually, I would even say prior to diagnosis, I work with people who just want to plan. And so that's good. They're early in the game. So we offer comfort measures, advocacy, guidance. We create meaningful, peaceful end-of-life experiences. Sometimes we're there just to witness not so peaceful end-of-life experiences, though we try to help support. So we work with established ethical standards. We focus on compassionate care that honors a dying person's wishes and support their loved ones through this journey. So that's from the National End-of-Life Doula Association, and there's lots of different options out there, or definitions out there, I should say. Let's see, the other thing I want to do, can I do it, is to pin myself to make sure I'm on this recording. Or spotlight. I don't know the difference between pin and spotlight. That's okay. All right. So lots of names, and you may feel more drawn to one of these, or over time decide that you like one of these names more than another if you're considering taking on this role. I've seen lots. So death midwife, death doula, death walker, end of life doula, transition guide, threshold guide, end of life coach, end of life planner. And I probably could think of a few more to put on there. I know one doula who actually just bills herself as respite care because that's her specialty area. She doesn't do advanced planning, for instance. You could call yourself an advanced planner. So there's lots of ways to call yourself, and you may feel led towards a certain one of those at a certain point. So, and then sometimes people are interested in this doula role, but they don't realize that there's lots of other kinds of doulas too, and maybe they feel more drawn towards one of these. I know a lot of people that have been birth doulas that are now death doulas, or vice versa. So, birth, antepartum, postpartum, gender transition, surgical, abortion, pregnancy loss or bereavement, full spectrum. I know someone who's in a full spectrum program. I don't honestly know like how many of these types of areas they cover. I need full spectrum was a new term to me just this year. So, but there are some full spectrum doula programs out there, and so you'd have to just look to see what does that cover. There are fertility doulas and adoption doulas and death doulas. So, and probably a few I forgot. Feel free to jump in the chat and type if there's another area that I missed. So, first thing for you to contemplate is, what community or population are you feeling called to serve? And you may not know, and that's okay. You can just jot that down and mull it over. We're at that nice time of year, this sort of hibernation, going inward. hermit time. And this might start with, what population do you feel most comfortable working with? And then being open to hearing from the universe, from your guides, from your community. What are the community needs? Which way are you being directed? Who are you being directed to serve? All right, so we've got some specialty areas. Doulas wear many hats. See my cheesy hats. Um, and I think there's space for all of us. And you may decide you have skills in one area or feel more comfortable. And you may not know. Like me, I started with many irons and many fires, just trying to figure out what's the most energizing work for me. So advanced planning, practical household support, care coordination, offering respite to families, helping to plan and then to be present for vigils, being a home funeral guide, being a celebrant. And I think these two terms can be sort of used interchangeably, or the home funeral guide is helping someone plan it, and maybe the home funeral guide finds a celebrant to come lead the day of a home funeral. Bereavement, medical aid in dying, and VSED is voluntary stop eating and drinking. That is legal in all states. It's a very specialty area that a lot of these areas are not going to be covered. These programs for doula training are sort of the broad baseline. And then there may be certain areas that you want to do continuing ed in, like medical aid in dying or voluntary stop eating and drinking. Some of these, it's self-study, it's reading books, it's attending workshops. And then there are some training programs starting to pop up for these areas. I'm trained through the Academy of Aid in Dying Medicine and also through Patient Choices Vermont to support people for medical aid in dying, because it's legal in Vermont. And Vermont and Oregon are the only two states that allow people from out of state to come in. You can be a non-resident and come in and take advantage, but it's it's a difficult, can be difficult process if you're from out of state, because you're not familiar with all the resources in the area. So I'm called a wayfinder, is sort of the term that they've coined us. So
I love that term.
yeah,
I
wayfinder.
do.
So another specialty area is music. That's one of my specialty areas. Reiki, meditation, massage, shamanic practitioner work. And then focused populations. Maybe you're a doula that does all these things or some of these things, but you have a special population that you are passionate to work with. The L plus community, children, companion animals. I know, obviously not everyone that is approaching end of life is elderly. So sometimes you may feel particularly called to work with middle-aged or younger people that have particular diagnosis. Maybe you feel called just to work with people with cancer or dementia. So lots of areas there. And I think this is this list is one of the things that, like, I wasn't even sure what an end of life doula was when I signed up for the program, right? I was a musician who felt very called to do more bedside music. I had been asked multiple times throughout my life to make bedside music for the dying, and it was such a meaningful and special, really sacred experience for me that I felt called to do more of that. And now I'm doing a lot more of that. So what type of doula work resonates with you at this moment. Notice I put at this moment because obviously I started in one place and now I'm in a different. What's that first step on the path for you, perhaps?
How long have you been doing this, Lindsey?
Oh gosh. It's been a couple years. I still consider myself green. I'm not I will always still consider myself green in this work.
No, we're always evolving, right?
We are always evolving, always learning, and every case is different. And that's one of the things you'll learn in some of the training is this idea of beginner's mind. And yeah, that's so true. Don't go in with any expectations or plans. Just go in with an open heart and open ears. Whoops, I clicked on something. All right, so I'm highlighting some of my specialty areas today because I think that it could be helpful for you on your journey, possibly with your doula clients, but also with yourself. I think one of the most important things about getting into doula work is self-care. And so Reiki has been a really important part of my journey. It's a Japanese healing arts modality. It's not a religion, but it's a beautiful sort of philosophy and frame of mind and physical training. There's Reiki being offered now in hospitals and hospices. They have Reiki programs. Some of these, went away with the pandemic and are recovering. But it's a beautiful, hands-on technique. You're holding space for someone, you're channeling universal life force energy, and that could be whatever for whatever person. You're not directing it, you're not healing them. The energy is flowing. It's very tangible. I have done Reiki for people who've never had it before, and they're struggling with their pain management. Their morphine is not working well. And we come out of the session and they say, wow, that's the first time I've been without pain in I don't know how long. So there's always these question marks when you do these trainings and you feel drawn into this. And that it's been useful for you or it's been useful for me for little things like headaches or just feeling calmer, sleeping better. And then you use it with someone at end of life who is struggling to have the morphine work, and it's pretty phenomenal. So it's a complementary therapy. It's not meant to replace anybody's pain management program, but it's meant to be a comfort and a support. And then it's meant, so I do Reiki before I walk in to be with clients, and when I get back to my car, I stop and I do hands-on and maybe do a little meditation, do some Reiki to clear myself before I move on in my day, so that I'm not absorbing all the many emotions and energy. And so that was something that I knew I needed to do for myself before I could fully get into this work. So I work with Sensei Don Hansey at Essential Arts. It's been a great journey with her. I'm in my master level training right now, actually. So I did level 1 a couple years ago, and level 2 was last year. And she doesn't just do it all in one weekend, and that's what I love about Dawn's work. It gives you time to practice and integrate it into your life, and not just like come do level 1 and level 2 all in one weekend, which is just kind of info overload. And then how do you put it into practice? So. A lot of people ask me about the need. Yes, there's a huge need. And so obviously I'm focusing on the boomer population. But when I saw these statistics, it just sort of blew my mind that 11,400 Americans are going to turn 65 every day this year. That just blows my mind. By 2025, 73 million baby boomers will be 65 or older, making up a fifth of the population. And then, of course, there's people of other age groups that need doulas too. And I probably could have gone and found a lot of statistics like on how many people are experiencing cancer or terminal cancer diagnoses and stuff. So I feel like there's a huge need. I feel like this slide, or I could make many more slides about the struggles with the healthcare system. Yes, hospice can be lovely, but hospice also is stretched really thin. It's really maxed out. It's not a perfect system. I'm not an anti-hospice person. You'll meet some anti-hospice doulas. I'm just a sort of white glove it. I think I came out of my doula program thinking that we were just going to be tra la la buddies, everybody for the good of all hospice. And I've met a lot of hospice people that feel like they don't like end of life doulas. And, I see them as teammates. And I've met a lot of awesome, awesome hospice nurses, social workers, and stuff too. So, but I just wasn't really prepared for what a mixed reception. So I am more careful now. I don't just go, oh, I'm an end of life doula. Um, I, yeah. So just knowing and different facilities, you'll encounter different things. So, but there is a huge need. There's also just not enough beds, right? I just was looking the past few weeks for my 93-year-old father-in-law who's been in memory care and needed to move to nursing care. There's just not enough beds. And so, and there's, I think when most people are asked, they would prefer to age in place at home. And so, training at-home caregivers and people in the community to be a death care community and having doulas lead the charge on that. How can we, and that doesn't mean we take the place of hospice, but hospice can only get there once a week or twice a week in most cases. And so how do we fill those care gaps? Sometimes I go to train someone on how to prepare for a natural burial and shrouding, and walking them through that. But mom's at home and hospice hasn't been there yet. And oh, she just became bedridden 2 or 3 days ago. Well, the family didn't know about rolling on a schedule so she doesn't get bed sores or how to effectively, prop her and some of these hands-on care things because hospice hadn't come yet. They were coming in 2 more days. So there, yes, there is a need if you ever worry that there's not going to be enough need for your role. Yes, there are a lot of end of life doulas come. I think there's a lot of people feeling called into this, but I think it's a reaction to the reality of our current situation. So yes, many being called into work. I meet a lot of people that were healthcare professionals and they're burnout, or they're just doing it as a volunteer in their community. Maybe they're retired and have time and don't need to worry about this paying their bills. Therapists, counselors, chaplains, all who, in fact, I just met a hospice social worker this past week who is interested in end of life doula work. Some people like to use it sort of in tandem, but they are very separate hats if you're a counselor or a chaplain or yes, there's overlap in some of the things we do, but massage therapists, Reiki healers, musicians, caregivers, family members who have been through it and want to be more prepared the next time. People who see this benefit in the community for advocacy, for education. Maybe you don't have the space in your life right now to be holding vigils and being called out to be bedside, but you have time to do advanced planning work or advocacy around certain issues or education. So that's all options because we want to normalize this talk about death. We want to destigmatize this, and I think that's going to help us be a healthier society moving forward. I think it used to be normalized, and just within the past few generations with the modern era and the medical industry complex, things have changed. So I think people are being called into this work because they're looking for meaningful, person-centered work. They're burnout with the corporate world. I meet many people who feel like this is a spiritual calling as well. So, why are you being drawn into this work? What are you feeling like? And you may not know yet. You may just feel that little nudge or the mental curiosity about it, and can spend some time in the heart realm and the intuitive realms of what is it that's calling you in.
I think I check almost every box on the previous page.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And whatever that gateway is that's drawing you in may not necessarily be why you stay too,
Right.
right? You'll find all kinds of new things.
Yeah.
So I started thinking about, what skills have I needed to bring forth or cultivate. And you may not be, the top of the chart on all of these. None of us are. It may be hard. It may be hard for you to speak up and advocate for someone. Like, well, this patient said they really wanted this, and something else is happening. Doula work's going to help you grow as well. Learning more about compassion, learning how to have positive regard, unconditional positive regard for someone, learning how to be a bit of a librarian and do some resource finding for people. The skills of listening and reflecting and listening again. That's not a skill that a lot of us use in other parts of our life unless maybe we're a therapist. Normalizing the process. It may be very awkward at first, like you feel called in, but it's uncomfortable sitting bedside with someone or with the family with a lot of emotions going around, or hearing somebody's breathing changes at the end of life. So it takes time to cultivate that and make it feel like it's normal, because it's a part of nature. It's a part of this cycle that we're in. So you may need to help facilitate conversation. Maybe it's between friend groups. Maybe this person doesn't have family. Maybe it's between all the kids of the person, family circles. Continuing education, a lot of that. Skills in logistics and coordination. And you may decide not to take a job. You don't have to take every single inquiry that comes down the road. Maybe because I have a doula friend in the next town over who's fantastic at her advanced planning workshops. So maybe you don't feel like coordinating large groups of people is your thing. Beginner's mind, we talked about a little bit. And then there's the shadow work, and we're coming into that time of year too, that turning inward in the winter. Shadow work, I love that the UVM program does bring this forth, and I don't know if other ones do, so I'm not just trying to push you towards UVM. There's lots of great programs out there, but this idea that there are things in your background, in your psyche, in your spirit that may get stirred up, may get trigger points for you. It may be just parts of your personality, or it may be parts of your experience with death before. But shadow work is definitely an important part of this process to cultivate so that you can not burn out and be healthy in this work. And so with shadow work comes self-care. And a lot of us, well, I thought it was a different slide after, but a lot of us, myself included, and I say this myself included, have had to work on having a self-care routine, even realizing what is a self-care routine for me. So I do that type of work with people too, because I feel like if you can come up with self-care now, that's going to inform your end of life choices and how you want to be cared for. What are your values and your wishes at end of life? So I bring self-care, to everyone, because there's lots of family members that are being burnout, caregiver burnout. So it's just, I think, a skill that we don't work on in our society a whole lot, the shadow work and then self-care. And then I feel like they go hand in hand. So, what do you feel like might be some strengths that you saw on that list? And what do you think are some areas that you need to grow or that you've never even contemplated? And actually, I can go back to this list so that you can glance. I guess I put my shadow work slide somewhere else. It got moved, so oh well, might move it back.
It's in the
Um,
shadow.
it's in the shadows. Okay, so doula training programs. Again, I'm not here to be the expert on this, and I feel like every week I see like, oh, there's another one. There's a lot out there, and I think finding a good fit for you. Um, do you think you're gonna do better at online or in person? Do you feel like asynchronous, meaning your classes aren't meeting together at the same time, like we're being synchronous right now, but they drop the material and you have all week to work on it, is asynchronous, and sometimes you come together for meetings? Or self-paced, where all the content's there and you need to remember to log in and work your way through it on your own. And I've learned, because I signed up for a self-paced training of another modality this past year, I didn't log in and get it done. I did much better when they dropped the material once a week. I still like to work on my own pace during the week, and I could fit it in with my other work. But just that there's something holding me accountable, and I have to, write up some things and submit some things that week. So some people do great at self-paced. So you have to sort of decide which of these sort of areas, or if you really would prefer in person. And if it's the technology that you're concerned about, because I was too, like things have changed a lot since I was in college. I had never taken an online course before doing my doula training, but it was very accessible to learn the platform and where to click. It was very logical and intuitive, and there were things to read and things to watch and an area to type to other people in. So pricing really varies. I didn't even try to go, and maybe at some point I will, but it's hard to keep up because I know some of the programs just change their prices a bit. I will say there are a lot of towns and grants available for continuing ed, town funds like foundations. So if that's an issue for you, you can look at that. Some of these programs also have scholarships, so not letting that necessarily make you discount it instantly. And I name a bunch of these courses. And yeah, there's more there, and there are some doulas doing their own version of training programs too, and that's not why I'm here. I'm not like planning on a doula training program, and you guys are my beta group. And I think there's pros and cons to that. I put these on the top: UVM, University of Vermont, National End of Life Doula Association, and INELDA, International End of Life Doula Association. NEDA has a proficiency exam, and so like I'm a NEDA member, I pay a membership fee, and so I can access some more of their continuing ed training. I didn't want to yet. I thought it might be nice a few years down the road to just do a refresher course and go through their whole thing. But you can also pay a fee and take their proficiency exam. I've done that for the after death care, which is sort of, again, that specialty area, not in regular doula training programs. So, are you needing structure or accountability, or you feel like you would do better self-paced? Would you feel like you would want to travel somewhere and do in person, or it would be easier to fit in to your current schedule? And then we come to the point, because I know some of you are in a program or you finished a program and you're thinking about how to launch. Do you want to be in a business or not? I really, really feel like there's room for all of us in this. I've met some volunteer people that I feel like are a bit judgmental of me because I charge, but I don't have the luxury. I'm in my 40s and I'm still paying my student loans from my music degree. So I'm not lucky enough that all my bills are paid for. And I have a son who's a teenager and going to be maybe going to college. So I don't feel like there's any shame in that. Everybody else on the care team is being paid for in compensation in some way. And so I do offer sliding scale. I have pro bono clients, and then I have clients that pay, and I often offer not just a sliding scale where it's wide open, but I give a range or I give 3 tiers for people to
Mm.
choose from because sometimes people just they want to pay and they just aren't sure what's appropriate. Or I've had a pro bono client that still really wants to pay me, but I know things are really really tight for them. I don't want them to be making choices about feeding themselves. And so I say, how about this? You just cover my transportation costs. Like we do the mileage rate reimbursement rate. And if you can do that this week, great. And if you can't, don't sweat it. And I am lucky enough that my husband uh, can pay a lot of the bigger bills, but I'm overlapping this, and I'll talk about that. I'm overlapping this with being a music teacher for 26 years. And so, but there's been enough. There's been plenty coming in, and there's been paying clients, and there's been pro bono, and there's been a balance. So, um, business structures are things to think about too. Do you want to be in collaboration with other doulas? Do you want to be on your own? If you're on your own, I highly recommend being an LLC, limited liability company. You register your name with the state. It's just a couple $100. That could probably be a whole nother workshop just on some of the costs. And I'm happy to share my startup costs with people. It being an LLC gives you a little bit of protection if someone were to sue you, like a unhappy kid, like the parent fell. Yes, older people fall and they feel like it's your gross negligence. You were sitting bedside, and they fell and broke a hip or something. So you have that extra protection of your personal assets if you have the LLC, or maybe it's going to be a nonprofit that you want to have as your structure. So pros and cons, we could probably do a whole workshop on that. And coming up with a business model. I didn't sit and do like a super formal, I do have workbooks and stuff. I have been self-employed for 26 years as a musician, so I just let this be an outgrowth of that business. But if you've not been in business before, just learning some of those basic things like keeping track of your expenses so you can take them off of your taxes. And then I just wanted to highlight that abundance mindset. I feel like there's space for all of us. There are people near, like in the next town over, that volunteer. There's another doula in the next town over. I feel very collaborative and not in competition. I feel like this is not a scarcity, and it's really easy to get into scarcity mindset in this world because we're confronted with that all the time. So startup costs, people ask me that a lot. And these are going to vary depending on what you choose, like your certification program. Insurance was actually pretty cheap. Definitely have insurance. There, I will do a follow-up. I should have typed it out. There are 2 that list doula insurance. And one of them was the first one I signed up for, was like CMP insurance. They're these letters, and so it's not sticking in my mind. But it had me sort of as like an allied health worker, and we're non-medical. And so I
Oh,
thought that was weird. And then my insurance premium the next year went up a lot, and I didn't renew with them, and I found there was a second company because being an end of life doula is a new field, and so there was a second company, and I can look it up and send you guys a link. I apologize. I thought it would be in my brain. Um, they also offered a discount because I do this part time.
mhm.
And so I didn't, but it was still just like, I don't know, $300 to $400 a year. So, and if you do like a 12 pay, that spreads it out, but there's usually a discount for paying it all up front. Very affordable to have that insurance. So you've got that protection, you've got the protection of perhaps being an LLC or some other business entity. I have another friend who they're a C corp because of the her other consulting business, and so they just kind of
Mhm.
put it under that umbrella. So, but they call it the corporate veil. But anyway, having some sort of incorporation so that you have a little bit of protection of your personal assets if you were to be sued. There's certainly the cost to having a website, whether you get someone to design it or just do it yourself, but you've got to pay for your URL and you've got to pay for the hosting platform. And then marketing, having somebody design your logo, but maybe you do it in Canva. I learned Canva when I first started this. I had a friend, Dawn Hansey, actually, my Reiki master, nudging me, just learn Canva. I could do it. I'm still learning, but I could do it. I did this presentation in Canva, like the PowerPoint and whatever. This is not really PowerPoint, but slides are a new thing for me. I did not do these in college, so so there's lots of help, and being willing to grow in other areas. You can do it. You can do it. So I've certainly had help learning how to do my website and Canva for logo and designing business cards and stuff. But even just printing them, there's going to be a little cost. And then joining NIDA or Inelda. And there's a few other websites that you can have yourself listed on. And then there's no cost for having a Google business. And I certainly have people find me that way. And sometimes they're not really in my service area, or I could work with them online to do planning or meditation coaching or whatever it is. But they really want someone to be in person. So I give them a referral. But having that Google business profile is an easy way. I haven't actually done a ton of advertising. I've had enough. I don't want to be completely overwhelmed with it, but I've had enough business come in this year without doing any newspaper. I certainly have my workshops that I have publicized and my name gets out that way, but people find me. All right, and then some other startup costs is just time. It definitely takes time to get started. Um, Learn from my mistake. I thought I was going to just be a sole proprietor, which doesn't have any type of protection. And so I had a logo, did my website, had this name I was using, and then did a workshop and realized, like, oh, I really need to be an LLC for a little more protection. Well, that name was taken. So I had to go back and redo the logo and redo the website and reprint those business cards. So check on that, incorporating that LLC name with the Vermont Secretary of State if you're in Vermont, or I guess it'd be Massachusetts Secretary of State. Um, yeah, and I'm thinking of coming up with some checklists and just having that list of some of the stuff that I did and where I went. Because yeah, you can just chip away at it a little bit each week and get it done and be able to launch. Some people do a more formal market analysis, but you could just informally jump onto Google and see, and jump onto the NIDA and Inelda and I want to say it's like deathdoula.org is a woman who's just created a website. And I've had people off of each of those sites that find me, and I've had people from just Google. But what is the market right now? And I don't think this should be your deciding factor, should I do this or not? Because there's room for all of us. Even up in the Northeast Kingdom of Vermont, where I am, much less populated area, but there are some doulas around, but I do not feel like we're stepping on each other's toes. I really feel like we're being quite collaborative. So,
I was wondering about that, especially with UVM.
yeah.
There just
Yeah.
seems to be a market saturation, but it doesn't sound like it.
Mm-mm. I think there's a lot of people that just do it for their own knowledge and never actually launch into business.
Mm,
Um, and there's some people that just do it so they can feel more comfortable volunteering at their local hospice. And that's totally cool and valid too. So, yeah. But just so you're aware of who's out there and what are they doing, and that might make you decide, like, okay, I'm not going to focus on advanced planning. I'm going to focus on this other area. Um, but I've had clients from all over too. It's not, in fact, like several from Franklin County, which is closer to Burlington right now, and I haven't had a lot, like I haven't had a Newport client. I live closest to Newport. I know that would change if I was doing some active advertising, but
mm,
I've had enough people coming in that I'm helping that I had somebody in Montpelier. It's like all these are like an hour and 15 minutes. Like that's what I decided my radius approximately was going to be. So, and then sometimes I decide to help someone that I know down in Boston or whatever. Sarah knows about that. So some of you may be transitioning from another career, and there's no right way. I know some of you have had sort of some hard endings where like the job is done and you're needing more work now, and maybe you've found something else, but you're really thinking about this as the career path. And some of you may be retired, some of you may be actively in another job, and like, how can I do this? So, what I've done is I've overlapped. I'm still teaching music 3 days a week in the afternoons. I know that if I do get called out, like for a medical aid and dying day, for instance, a dignity day, that I may reschedule those students. Thus far, it's worked out okay. I haven't had a lot of big conflicts with my teaching days versus when I fit in doula work.
mhm.
I started with a soft launch. I didn't have just a big, like, everything's ready, boom, big publicity. I started offering some workshops to the community. I started with some people that I knew that wanted to do some advanced planning or some green burial. And I also was very lucky when I came out of the UVM program. My friend Dawn Hansey, her mother was in a nursing home and the active dying phase started. And so she called me in. And so I got to, what it was such a beautiful way for me to learn,
Mm.
hands on right outside of the program. So I know sometimes in these programs they say, just start volunteering at hospice. And like, yes, if you feel like you can then make a name for yourself and be a business if you want to be a business and not just be stuck in volunteer mode. But it is a great way to get time practicing a lot of those skills of holding space, listening, being open-hearted, non-judgmental, giving room for the person to have their process and supporting them. But it's possible to not do that and to be in some other areas of doula work. So don't feel like you have to volunteer at a local hospice. And sometimes I meet people that their local hospice is really overwhelmed and understaffed, and like there's no volunteer coordinator, or the volunteer coordinator's not doing their job. I
Mm.
have a friend who, and they just felt so frustrated because they couldn't actually do anything there. It wasn't being organized, so they started looking for other ways to engage.
Mm.
Maybe it's running a death cafe. So it's possible, and you can soft launch and just decide like I'm busy with my other work, but I'm going to start with one client. What is that one client? Like what type of client do I want that to be? you don't have to be wide open for anything and everything. Like if you don't have time to do vigil work, don't take on vigil work. So networking is a great way too to, some of my work this past year has come from other doulas referring it to me because it's out of their area or out of their service zone or not their area of specialty. Talking to friends and family. I did some practice planning with a friend who I knew wanted to do a green burial, for instance. So I walked her through a green burial consultation where we did some planning. And then after that, she's referred several people to me that needed some bedside care and wanted to be buried at home, or someone that wanted shrouding. So you can start small within your own network of colleagues and friends and family to get started. You can do marketing. I haven't jumped into a lot of that yet. After my son is driving next year, maybe I'll jump into a little more marketing and take on a little bit more work. But there's enough. And then community connections. Maybe it's because you attend a death cafe or you hold a particular workshop. And then some of you have asked me before, like, what's your day or week or life look like? And you can choose how structured. Maybe you decide I'm only going to do Zoom calls on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I'm going to be out doing house calls on Tuesdays and Thursdays. You can decide. Mine's a little more flexible. I have a big variety. During the week, there are lots of inquiry emails and phone calls that roll in. Sometimes people call you in a panic. I want to do some sort of workshop where there's kind of like three categories of inquiries, I feel like. And sometimes it's, I just got a really heavy diagnosis and I'm panicking. Other people, it's like, I'm just a planner. I want to plan ahead. And the other one is like, oops, we waited until the end. Mom's in active dying and we are so burnt out and we need help. So different areas. In my week, I'm often on Zoom with colleagues, with clients, with interested people to chat. I'm spending a lot of time doing research, digging up resources for people. Sometimes I'm sitting, typing up. I've had a phone call with someone and taken several pages of notes, and now I'm putting it together an advanced planning document for them, whether it's a formal advanced directive or just like a vigil plan of things that a person would like to see happen, and then making sure that gets distributed to the right people. I like doing workshops, so sometimes I'm working on planning a workshop, or sometimes it's a week or a month. Like September, I did a lot of natural burial, green burial workshops. Sometimes I'm typing up checklists and plans for people. Sometimes I am just on a phone call or bedside, turning towards suffering, listening, asking questions, maybe doing some advocacy, taking time out for self-care. Sometimes it's very stressful and sometimes it's not. Sometimes things seem to be falling apart for all my clients at the same time. And then other weeks it seems like everything's going really smoothly. Sometimes I'm driving through a snowstorm. That's been the past couple weeks to visit clients. So there's in-person visits. Sometimes there's just phone visits. Sometimes it's logistics. So, and sometimes it has just been, turning towards suffering, meaning like that bedside care, keeping somebody's mouth moist, putting music on, doing some skincare. So there's different, there's the hands-on, there's the more planning areas. So after looking at all this, I'm sure there's some voice in the back of your mind saying, yeah, like, but I'm concerned about X, Y, or Z. Your fear might be with how to launch, or your fear might be, I'm not sure I can handle being in such an emotionally intense situation, or what is this going to stir up within me? So, jotting down what you've noticed has been coming up today, your concerns, your fears, or that self talk of like, well, there's no way I could do a website, whatever that is. And that's the start of, you know, the shadow work and the relationship with death, too. I know one of you had said to me that you were just so tearful going through some of this stuff in the training, and they design it that way in the UVM course to like really stir up the emotions and put your relationship with death really on the forefront. And the more you do that, the more comfortable you get. And maybe the next step is just attending a death cafe, because you get to be around other people that are grappling with their emotions, their grief, or their concerns about the path to come. And practicing holding space in that type of setting and just being around those emotions in that discussion might make it easier to see what is being stirred up within you. And that's going to be there, and it's going to shift and change too. So, and then once you've done some of that, putting that internal work with starting some sort of self-care routine, I think is really important. And routine can be tricky for me. I do all kinds of stuff. I like a varied day and a varied week, but I really have tried to start, daily doing some Reiki, doing some meditation, or at least every time I make a cup of tea, or every time I take a shower. Self-care for you might be going to a dance class. It might be going on a walk outside. I feel like I could do like a whole workshop, and I think I would like to actually this year, a workshop on self-care for doulas, because you may do a few things, but maybe there's some other things you hadn't thought about that could be really helpful. And then we come to this 6-step manifesting protocol by Don Hansey, which has been a really helpful framework for me this year working. And it does not have to be linear. I chose this circle. But starting with vision, and I know we're right at noon. I wasn't exactly sure how long this would go. We're close to the end of the slides. I think next is the meditation slide, but spending some time envisioning, whether that's just sitting and daydreaming, or just writing it out and seeing what comes, or going on a guided meditation like I'm going to take you. Vision can be the first step, and it doesn't have to be linear. You can bounce back and forth between these, and I've looped around. I kind of joked to Dawn and said, yeah, my manifesting protocol has looked like this. My Reiki journey, it's just like a big but it's happening. And so spending time doing visioning, and then from that vision getting more specific and coming up with some intentions. Can be intentions for yourself, intentions for your business or your volunteer work, intentions for the community. So it can be different layers of intention, which is different than a goal or a to-do list. Like I intend in 2026 to expand my self-care practices so that I have more capacity to hold, to take on more vigil clients, or more capacity to offer more public training workshops. Intentions can be shorter, they can be, but they're they lead us into actionable steps later on. And then pausing after you have your vision and some intentions down, and know that you'll be coming back to those. And I certainly am all throughout the year, coming back and looking at those, maybe setting a new intention for the month. It's nice to go in cycles. In nature, we're in cycles, and it's nice to work in cycles with our personal development and with our business development. So I encourage you to think about it that way. And then loop around and pause and have some appreciation. Pause for what you've already done. Like we could pause right now, have some appreciation that you have taken time to show up today. It's amazing. And really dive deep and be thoughtful so that you can go forward with intention. And then pause, and this is where I am right now. I've been all around this year, and I'm back to listen, and that's why I wanted to hold this. Universe is getting my attention. I've had so many emails, and I asked my colleagues, and they're like, no. So I'm like, okay. It's like 13 people now as of last week approached me, and so I'm at that listen phase of like these are the things I've been working with, and I want to sit and listen and see what are your needs in the coming year? What are the people that I've worked with this year? What have they needed? How has that felt working with them before I jump into action in 2026? So, and then pausing, and I will do this on a weekly or monthly basis too. I will go back and do some appreciation and celebration too. Like, sometimes you don't realize how much you've done until you pause and look back, and it's like, wow, I did a lot this month, and I'm getting ready to do sort of a rundown of what have I done in 2025. Because this has been my soft launch for a couple of years now. This was my 5-year plan. I wasn't going to do this till my son had flown the nest, but here I am. So, it's hard to remember this, but Vialac, Vialac, and that, I know she brought this up with me multiple times, and it's taken me months to kind of remember all these steps. But I use them now kind of as a framework to flow between. Super helpful. And I will go back before I jump into next year and look at what did I write for my vision a couple of years ago and last year and going forward. And this can be for your business, this can be for your personal life, and this can be with being in community. What are you offering to the community? So, all right, let's take a short meditation. We've been in brain mode, and let's just slip into heart mode, intuitive mode for just a few minutes. Some of you may be familiar with, and some of you may not, and that's okay. A meditation that I'm going to take you on today is using a drum, and using this percussive, repetitive sound really helps get that frontal lobe of our brain to turn off and allows the theta brain waves to come through so we can be in a deeper meditative state of listening, of receiving guidance. Our ancestors have been doing it for thousands and thousands of years, and it may be kind of new for you, but I encourage you to give it a try. I'm going to guide you, but you can also just later on take a drum track and do this yourself. Some Journey with Compassion is my business name, and this is what some people call a journey. So there are tracks. Let me move all of our heads so I can reach up here, and I'm going to stop this share, and I'm going to share a different screen with all right, so there's lots of them out there. I like this one because it specifically has this callback. The drum beat changes. Here's Sandra. Sandra, I'm sure, has drum tracks out there too. I just grabbed this one real quick because I knew it was here. But the drum beat is going to change at the end to help us pause and go back the path that we came and come back into ourselves. So today I'm going to encourage you we're going to journey out into this void. We're going to pass through a lovely beautiful area of nature that you get to decide for yourself. And I encourage you to go back to that place and use that as your sort of launch pad into other areas of exploration. But going to the void is this place not of emptiness, but of potential. There's lots of opportunity for creation, for things beginning. And into this void, you can call a compassionate guide, you can call an animal that might teach you something, you can work with any type of nature being. We see the fire here. It could be an element to teach you about, so, and setting your intention. And so this might just be deciding, for instance, like I'm going to set an intention to go to the void and call a compassionate guide to help me know how to start. Or it might be more specific, like I want to go and meet with water to learn how to be more flexible and flow in the coming year, or how to cleanse and renew with fire. What is fire? What can fire teach me? It could be an animal, it could be a tree, it could be one of your ancestors, but it allows our brain to turn off the frontal lobe of reasoning and rationality and allow for creativity. So we plant that seed of creativity and allow it to go where it needs to go. Let's check and make sure. I'm going to check and make sure everybody's muted. We're all muted. Okay, and we're not going to do a full 15 minutes. I did it forward, but take a second and stretch and get your body out of concentration and thinking mode and wiggle around. And often what you're expecting to happen will not happen. It will surprise you sometimes what will happen on a journey. And you can take a moment and take a deep breath. And if you don't make it out on the journey, that's fine. Just sitting in quiet and allowing that repetitive motion to clear your mind. Sometimes just all we need is a clear mind. Sometimes that's the lesson. You might drift off into sleep. Sometimes that's what we need, is a little bit of sacred rest. All right. So we're gonna do a short one. As you hear this drum beat, you can allow it to clear your mind. You can feel the vibrations in your body start to relax you. And you can feel yourself take a breath and release. And you can start to envision, if you can see yourself walking out, and maybe you can't visually see that. Maybe you just want to rock side to side as if you're walking down a path. It's perfectly fine to move, to tap on yourself in rhythm. You can tap on your brain if you want to reset your neurons. Relax your muscles and turn off your mind. And I want you to find yourself walking out, and you see a beautiful spot in nature. Maybe you can't see it, but you can smell it. What do you smell in nature? What do you feel? Do you feel the breeze? What do you hear? Do you hear animals? Do you hear water running? walking and know that this is your spot to come back to. And you walk until you come to a place that you decide is going to be the void. Maybe you've walked up, up, up. Maybe you've climbed a tree and you're out in the void of space. Maybe you've walked down into the ground to find a cave. Maybe you found a nook in a tree. You've started to walk out and find this place that's going to be the void, that limitless place of possibilities, of creativity. And you settle yourself there and feel like everything melts away. And you can now repeat to yourself your intention in this void. Maybe you're calling a guide to yourself. Maybe you're calling a mirror that shows you what you look like as a doula. And repeat your intention again. And now allowing space for inner knowing, or for visualizing, or maybe for hearing guidance. The drum beat has changed, and so it's time to make note of where you were and thank anyone who's come forward to work with you, and know that you can journey back to them at any point. And now it's time to follow your steps back out of the void, back through nature, all the way back down the path that you came, until you feel yourself sitting in your body. Full of gratitude for the small discoveries you may have just begun. So that was a short journey just to give you a little taste of one way to work. Maybe you decide you want to put on some beautiful music or just sit in silence and do some of the same type of work with visualizing what your work could be, listening for guidance. But take a second and jot down anything that came to you, and know that that's always available to you to go back to and try again. A lot of the drum tracks out there are 15 minutes or 30 minutes. The more frequently you do that, the easier it gets to go there and to do it. And sometimes things can be very clear and sometimes it can be a bit fuzzy. And you may sit with whatever you saw or felt or heard this week. And you may not know what to really think of it quite yet. All right. So next steps could be, does not have to be, but I will be very curious, and you can, we'll have some Q&A here in a second, but you're also welcome to email me later or write in the chat what you feel like is going to be most helpful to you. Maybe you like being in this group and would like some more group sessions. Maybe you would prefer some one-on-one coaching to talk through. I know both have been helpful for me. So I wrote phase 1, 2, and 3 meetings. Some of you are in sort of planning, just getting started. Some of you are actively training and learning. And some of you are ready to expand out. So maybe you want an offering that is directed at the particular phase that you're in. Maybe you feel like you've done phase 1, 2, 3, you're working on expanding, but you really recognize you want some self-care or meditation coaching. That's all available. And then I just added this on the slide today because it occurred to me. Maybe some of you have trained and would like to jump into some of those specialty areas. I've got a after death care workshop coming up with 2 other doula colleagues in January. So feel free to email me. I didn't put it on the slides because I thought that wasn't like my main goal for today. There's going to be 2 online sessions and 1 in person in January for after death care, shrouding, that type of thing. How to legally do that, because there are some things you need to be careful about in that realm. And maybe next steps are establishing a community of support. Like I said, there's been maybe 13 of us thus far approach me, come together. And so maybe that's going to feel helpful, a community of support for just getting started. And then I wanted to let you know that Casey March is one of my doula colleagues who has the Northeast Death Doula Network. And so there are some doula curious people in there, but it's mostly for people who have had training. And we have monthly meetings, and it's been wonderful continuing ed, a wonderful way to network. We have separate business meetings because there are volunteers in the group. And so once a month we get together too and just talk through business challenges or ideas or workshop stuff. We usually share events that are happening. We're on a platform called Circle, and then we have Zoom meetings. And that's just been a wonderful way to feel in community with other doulas. And then maybe you're interested in a further presentation. I know Dawn would love to do an expanding your toolbox on Reiki. So these are some possibilities for the future. And so now I turn to you. I'm curious about maybe things I didn't cover that you're curious about, or other comments or discussion about where you are and what's helpful and what's on your mind. So I open up the floor to you, and I can let me pause the recording or end the recording. If you're watching this, I don't know of anyone yet who's emailed me that needs the recording, but if you're watching the recording, feel free to email me your questions and discussion. How do I turn it off?